I've now essentially got brain damage from what happened. And I have episodes where I lose the sensation in my leg. So I'm under a neurologist again, and it will go for like 3 days at a time, and it's just really sad. And I had an episode just recently, and I remember being like, oh, it's cool. Like 3 days is usually the max. And it went on for 6 weeks. And yeah, it was terrifying. Growing up, I was really active and I absolutely loved dancing. So like my goal was to be a professional dancer, and that's something that I really wanted to do. I never really realized, obviously as a child, how much movement impacted my mental health. So I was a very like happy child, and I kept to myself and I got on with things. My mum said you were always just in the corner, like just doing your own thing, and you were quite comfortable doing that. I think now I'm an adult, I look back and go, it must have been because I was moving so much. And I do preach all the time about how movement is incredible for mental health. But isn't it so amazing, like being a child and you don't know that's the reason you're feeling good? Like you just play out and you do things and you move. And it definitely contributed to, my happiness. But dancing was a big one for me. I think dancing was escaping a lot of things as well. I absolutely loved going into my own world for like an hour and moving my body through dance. So growing up as a dancer, my goal was to be a professional dancer. I just decided one day, I was like, I know what I want to be. I want to dance. I want to do it for a living. So I put a lot of my attention and focus into that. Whether it's through movement or not, my kind of objective in life is to make everybody feel like they're part of something and they should be here. Everybody should feel like they're able and allowed to be somewhere. So I think as a child, it wasn't just movement and dancing that I wanted to do. I wanted to make people feel good. And I think through dancing and, seeing my parents watch me or people watch me and light up or smile, or, I take an exam and you'd see, the adjudicator in the exam like smile at you and give you this marking that basically says, I like you and I like what you're doing. I didn't really pull my weight in other classes. And I remember my mum spoke to my dance teacher before parents' evening and said, please, can you not just say how amazing Esmee is at dance and actually try and give her a bit of a kick up the arse in her other lessons? And I remember her saying to me, and this is why this is such a mad moment, she was like, well, what are you going to do if you break your back? And you can't go to dance college and you can't dance. And I remember being like, adamant and looking at her being like, I'm not going to break my back. Like proper like teenager as well, like just rude and like, it's not going to happen, like attitude. And it essentially did. It wasn't obviously breaking my back, but it wasn't long, probably after that parents' evening, a couple of years later, I had got into dance college. I had got a scholarship. I knew what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. I'd been struggling with a hernia that I had, that I'd kind of like brushed under the carpet because I wanted to finish my last year of dance school. And I was like, I'm going to get that repaired before I go to dance college. And I went in and, within a second, my life changed. I went under to have the procedure done, and during the surgery I was having like seizures, so they had to bring me around and the seizures carried on and it left me basically paralyzed from waist down. So I'm 18 by 1 month, which is crucial when I think about this story and tell this story, because at 17, you're classed as a child. So if you're in hospital or under a doctor or whatever, you're a child. So you're on the children's ward and you get your parents with you 24 hours and you're a child. People are looking out for you and, they're looking after you and they're with you every step of the way. By a month, I was an adult. And it meant that I was on my own a lot. So when I was in the hospital, my parents had to leave by 9 p.m. every night. They couldn't come back till visiting hours. And yeah, even though I was 18, I grew up massively in that moment. Like that's the oldest or most mature I have ever felt, having to just become an adult because someone's told me I am. I felt depressed probably for the first time in my life. And I felt these emotions. I think anxiety was huge. That feeling of not being able to move. And I tell you what it's like, when you like kind of get the ick about something or you cringe or you're in a moment and you want to shake it off, you literally shake it off. Being paralyzed, you can't shake it off. And I think that was the moment that I realized how crucial movement had been, not because I was going to be a dancer, not because it kept me fit, not because it made me look a certain way, because it made me feel good. And once that was taken away from me, I really suddenly realized, how am I going to feel good again if I can't move? And how am I going to shake off feelings that don't feel right if I've only ever known to dance them away or run away from them or stand up? Even just when you're thinking of something, quite depressive, or you're thinking of a memory that makes you feel really sad, whether it's grief or like a really, sad memory, naturally as humans, we get up and we move. I felt the depths of emotion to the max at that moment and at such a young age. And they were really, really hard. The general feel was confusion. And that was really unnerving. Like, it felt very scary to be around these people that, we look up to as like professionals and like they help us. Everyone was confused. I don't remember much as well, which is really weird because, I lost probably 3 days of my life in that time, and I have flashes of things. But I mean, my short-term memory had gone anyway, and my speech had gone with it. Like, so I don't remember much. But when I think back to it, I think confusion, and I think my mum, they'd brought into the theatre or the recovery room and said, do you want to see her, after they told her what had happened? And she obviously said yes, and she came in, and my mum says, I walked in and you were laying on this bed, seizuring, and there were about 8 anaesthetists around you. And she said they were just saying, come and see this, like to each other, people running in, not even to necessarily help, just because they were like, what is going on? Like, we don't know what to do. And I mean, it must be fascinating for them as well. They work in medicine to see this and be like, well, how and what happened? So I think knowing that story and then kind of not remembering much, confusion was massive, and no answers. Like, every day was, we don't know. Could it have been a stroke? Also, unfortunately, they don't want to talk too much because, no one knows what happened. It could have been negligence. It probably was now. Like, you don't know. So people don't speak, which is really sad, because they probably get told, don't speak too much and don't answer too much, to a young girl who's 18 asking a billion questions and panicking, saying, what's going on? There was no answers because I suppose they had to, stick to a protocol.
Hi, welcome to Deep.
This channel goes a level deeper.
Deep is a brand new YouTube channel that is dedicated to the amazing experiences of incredible individuals.
We basically try and answer the questions that you always want the answer to, but you don't feel like you can ask.
Myself and the team are responsible for a lot of the factual content that you might have seen on YouTube, Minutes With, The Gap, Agree to Disagree, among others. And we set up this new studio and this new channel to go a level deeper.
We will be uploading a new video every single week.
There'll be a wide range of stories, so please hit the subscribe bell.
Please let us know in the comments if there's anything you want us to cover, any stories that you've been interested in, any questions you wanted to ask.
We hope you enjoy. Now back to our story.
It's incredible how you can lose your identity so quickly. That was the hardest part about it. I couldn't even look at my friends who went off to dance college. I remember at the time of like Facebook, and that was what we used. And, people were going off to dance college and it was exciting and fresh, and they were making new friends, and they were uploading statuses and photos of them starting dance college. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like sick with resentment. I hated them, and it was so sad because I was so happy for them, but just so sad that I wasn't part of it. It was really horrible. You flick continuously in between feeling so sorry for yourself, and this is so unfair, but also my recovery rate of like nurturing myself was happening really quickly. It was kind of like the flicking constantly between just feeling so victimized and hurt and why me, to taking control of me and like almost hugging myself and being like, it's okay, we're going to figure it out. So yeah, even that was like I got like whiplash. 1 minute I was like angry, next minute I was empowered. It was an emotional like tornado for sure. And at such a young age, like hormonal and trying to find my place in the world, being a girl, a woman. Like, I remember when I was paralysed, and it's so bad, but one of the first things I honestly thought was, no one's going to fancy me. And I'm like, oh my word. But we had been so conditioned at that age, I was born in 91. So like my growing up was all about, validation from men and like getting a boyfriend and boys fancying me. And I remember like when I was younger, I used to sometimes wish that people fancied me. Like I'd, make a birthday wish. I wish that every man in the world fancied me. Like, because that's what I thought success was. And I remember my first thought was, no one's going to fancy me and no one's going to want to have sex with me and no one's going to marry me and I'm going to be lonely. And I'm like, now I could hug me because that hurt. Like, even though now I can laugh, it felt like the worst thing in the world not being fancied because I was paralyzed. Like, it's so sad. I had lost my speech and my short-term memory and also like the motor skills in my hands. So they were moving, but I couldn't, move my fingers. It was more just the arms. And then from waist down, couldn't move anything. And I'd lost, everything from waist down in terms of like the toilet, everything. And what had happened was as days were passing, this is why the first 3 days, I don't really remember, but my memory was coming back. My speech was coming back. My upper body, my hands were coming back. It's like day 4, day 5, day 6. And it was just the lower body just wasn't coming back. And I think once you get to like 3 weeks and, they were saying like everything's coming back in such a rate and then it's just paused. To them, the natural thing was, well, this must be it then. Like you've got this back. Brilliant. Naturally, they're like, we don't know why it hasn't come back and everything else has. So yeah, there was a real natural sense of just, this is it. I wasn't allowed to move at first. And I was very, as you can imagine, based on like my childhood, I was very keen to like get moving. So I wanted to start doing like self-rehabilitation, like whatever I could do. I'd be laying in the bed, trying to wiggle my toes, trying to move. I got really like instantly good at moving around on my hands, getting myself into a wheelchair and all of that. But for the start of it, they wouldn't let me move because they needed to do a certain amount of scans to check that my spinal cord hadn't been broke. Like, that they had to do all these special checks. As soon as they kind of said, your spine's fine, I was like, right, here, like it's game time. And I just remember any moment I had where I wasn't feeling exhausted, because it is tiring even trying to wiggle your toe, which sounds crazy, but the focus, I would just do loads of self, rehabilitation. And then I probably excelled a lot quicker as well, because then they got the intense physio team to come in and they'd take me down to the rehab center like 3 times a day. I'd get up on parallel bars and just try and drag my legs along. So I was just doing as much as I could. And it got me then out of hospital, being able to stand, kind of put one foot in front of the other, like with aid, and I was in a wheelchair. And then from then on, I just was doing like dance rehabilitation with my old dance teacher and going back to baby's ballet. I remember going to a 3-year-old ballet class and standing up on my toes and my whole legs were shaking, thinking there are 3-year-olds in here, like learning to walk or dance, and so am I. That was crazy. And it's so weird. Like when I talk about it now, I'm like, yeah, I just carried on living. Like I just got on with it. There was really like not much support. When I think back, like I think when you are a fighter and you're someone who fights, people don't jump in as much. I think people just forget, like you just carry on, and then people are like, oh, it's just weird. It's weird now I think about how I just kind of left and it was like, go get them. I remember thinking about how I used to dance and just being like, I won't ever be that dancer because of what I've gone through. And I don't know, I think it was the right decision and it feels right now, but I did it quite quick where I went, that chapter was amazing and now what are we going to do? And it was a decision that I made. I wanted to do more with what had happened and I wanted to help more people with what had happened. And I think that's where I closed the book to dancing and was like, open the next chapter to how can I use this to help other people. It'd been just over a year. I went for my first run. And I remember going on the same route that my mum and I would take. And I got to just over a kilometre and my left leg just completely lost sensation. Like, couldn't move it. And I absolutely freaked out. I had no idea what had gone on. I called my mum. She come and got me. We went back to the doctors. By the time I got a referral, the leg had come back. I'd gone and spoke to them. And they said, it seems like you've had an after episode with your brain, but we don't know what it is. And I said, fine, you know, like kind of left it. And I remember being like, well, that's it then, I'm not going to run anymore. Like, I'm glad to be walking, I'm giving up running. So 6 years passed and I hadn't run for 6 years, and I love running. And someone said to me, do you want to run the London Marathon? I've got a spot on my team. And I just went, yeah. I remember sitting there as well at the time. I think I had a really like bad chest infection, and she wrote to me on Instagram. I literally just put, yeah. And I thought, if I'm going to start running, I do love running. I don't want to never run again. If I'm going to do it, it's training for a marathon. And I did this like sort of marathon plan. I had quite a lot of problems with my leg during it. I remember going out, running the London Marathon. I was out there for 5 hours, 39 minutes. I was so naive. I had no idea what pace meant, what time meant, what a good time was. I just went out there and had the best time. I felt so alive, and like it was the best day of my life. I was stopping, my nan came to see me, I was hanging out with her, drinking a can of Coke. She was like, aren't you meant to like be running? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I remember running down Tower Bridge and all my friends were like, Esmee. And I turned round and came back and they were like, no, keep going. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, why didn't everyone keep telling me to keep going? I remember going back to work the next day and people being like, oh, like what time did you get? And I was like, 5:39. It's like, and it's not even a bad time. It was just, people obviously put me in like this fitness athlete category, and it's all very sub 4 and all of this. And I just wish I could go back to that mindset, because for me, it was I'm running, and that's the best thing about it for me is just I'm running. That's how my running journey came back. And, you know, now it's something that I absolutely love doing. And then the kind of like problem with my leg continued. So even to this day, over the past 14 years, I've had about 6 to 7 episodes where basically I've now essentially got brain damage from what happened. And I have episodes where I lose the sensation in my leg. So I'm under a neurologist again, and it will go for like 3 days at a time, and it's just really sad. And I had an episode just recently, and I remember being like, oh, it's cool. Like 3 days is usually the max. And it went on for 6 weeks, and yeah, it was terrifying. And I'm back under a neurologist again for it. And, you know, we're going to see what we can do. But it was definitely the first time since I got paralysed that I was like, this could be it. I think I got to like week 4, and I think my boyfriend was like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I said, yeah, I'm all G to be positive. Like, I'm good with that. I said to him, we do need to just, for a second, stop just saying it's going to be fine, because if it's not, this is also fine too, you know. It doesn't have to be 2 legs working to be fine. You know, this could be it. I also need to start accepting this could be it, because it's going to really hurt if I don't accept. You know, I'm conscious and apprehensive about when it next happens again, and is it going to be longer, and is it going to be permanent? But I do remember in that moment thinking, I've done everything I want to do, and I felt really good about that. I was like, do you know what? If someone had said to me when I left the hospital when I was 18, you're going to have 14 years, you're going to go run, do all these amazing things, you're going to have the best experiences, but, you know, after 14 years, your left leg's going to go and that'll be it. I lived actively and moved how I would have if I knew that. And I felt really like proud of that moment. I kind of entered the ultra world, I feel like such a loser saying that, but I kind of entered that world accidentally and really naively again, which is amazing. And that's why I love it. That kind of marathon feeling I was telling you about earlier, where I was so naive, had no idea what was going on. I remember the same girl, Hannah. I actually just remembered the same girl said to me, we went to our friend's book launch, and she bounced up to me and went, do you want to run an ultramarathon, 250 kilometers across the Jordan desert? And I went, yeah. And I'm not even joking. I promise you when I say this, my brain didn't compute any words that came out of her mouth. Like the word ultramarathon, marathon, desert, 250 kilometers, you know, when you can't imagine something, like, you know how we can't imagine how big the world is, like, or the universe. It felt like that. And then I remember just doing a lot of running and, you know, keeping myself on my feet and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, I was out in Jordan running 250 kilometers across the desert, broken down into, on average, 50K a day. But some days, you know, could be 30, because you always have this long day, which is like 80 kilometers. So that was the longest one out of all of them. You get up at like 3 a.m. and set off under the stars, like with head torches in the middle of a desert. It's just crazy. And again, like, I am so grateful for how naive I was stepping into that. I hadn't Googled anything. I'd just gone for it. And again, there was like so many lessons and moments. So one of my favorites was definitely that, because it unlocked like just this new way of having an adventure on your feet. It felt really good. But yeah, there was moments of being alone in the desert where you're like, wow, you really get to know yourself. Like, if you think you know yourself, go to the desert and just see the same thing over and over. Sand and sand dunes, sand over and over, maybe a camel. And then get to know yourself, because I think I met Esmee in the desert 100%. And we laughed together, cried together, was mean to each other. But yeah, that was definitely a memorable one for me. When I was in the desert, it was just about keeping going. I loved that it was an ultra multi-stage in the desert, 40 degrees on sand, because you could never, ever get the question, how long did it take you? You're there because, you know, you're just being and living in that moment of putting one foot in front of the other. You're not checking you don't check your pace. You know, oh wow, I'm going, 5-minute kilometers on sand. Like, you just go, you leave in the morning, and you just know, I need to get to camp. Otherwise, I'm going to be lost in the desert. And that's your only option. And I think that's where there's a difference. It's 100% it's freedom. For me, personally, I felt the feeling of being paralyzed and not being able to move. And even like when I sit here now and I get into that kind of feeling and memory of not being able to move my legs, I just want to run. I want to sprint away from it. It's the most natural thing I can do to make me feel like I'm working, like my body works. I just think the day I can't run anymore is the day my body's not working as well anymore. It's confirmation that, I'm working, my body's working, everything's still okay. We can all say yes to something, and that's what it is for me. Just say yes to something, because one day it will be an actual no. There's going to be a day where someone says to me, do you want to come for a walk? And the words that will come out of my mouth will be, I can't. Not I don't want to, or I can't be bothered, or nah, like it will be, I can't. And I just want to make sure when I say I can't, I can sit there and go, but at least I have done it. And I feel good about that. And the one race that to me is like one of the ultimate is UTMB. And it's in Chamonix and it happens every year. I mean, people are out there, I'm talking like over a day, and you have to sleep on the way, and the elevation like going up is huge. For every 100 meters that is elevated in the race, you add on a kilometer effort. So if it was a 10K, but it was 1,000 meters of elevation, the effort of that is 20K. But I went out there, did this experience thing. And there was this woman called Courtney, who she was the first female. And it was amazing because there's not much female representation in running, ultra running specifically, and then ultra running up mountains even more so. She just got so much attention. She was everywhere. Like, she was all over the press. She was all over like social media. Everyone suddenly knew her name and UTMB. Like, my dad sent me a news article of her like months after UTMB, like, this woman's amazing. I'm like, yeah, I know, Dad, it's Courtney. Like, and it just felt so good. Like, my dad, who doesn't do anything like this, and he's sending me an article going, wow, yeah. And I remember I said, she's amazing, isn't she? And he said, yeah, but she's not my daughter. And it really meant a lot to me, him saying that. And I was like, UTMB will be the most disgusting thing I could probably ever do, but maybe that could be like the peak where I go, I'm only going as far as UTMB and then I'll come back down. I did one in Croatia, which was 260 kilometers over 6 days. That one was probably one of the hardest ones I've done in terms of terrain. It was so elevated, like up, up, up. But also what was hard about it was the ground. So imagine like ground just being flat, but going up. But this was, whether it was flat or going up, it was like big rocks. So you could never get your foot in. And I remember there was about 80 of us that went out to do that. And you can pull out, because this one was for charity, you can pull out and come back in the next day, whereas for some races you can't obviously do that. And 13 people out of 80 completed the full 260, so didn't pull out and go back in. And out of that, 5 of us were female. And I thought that was really cool. I remember being like, one, the fact that 13 out of 80 completed, but the fact that 5 were female in a sport that is just so, and it was saturated by men on that, it just felt really good. We label ourselves as like disabled or unwell or slow or tired or whatever it is that the condition is. And we make it our reality. And I do honestly think the minute you make it your reality, it just makes it 10 times darker. It's about finding your way back to you, remembering who you are, and then that's an addition to what's going on right now. It's like, I am me, I am Esmee, but right now I'm feeling unwell. Just really separating who you are and what the condition is one thing that I'd say. But also it's that acceptance thing. I think the hardest thing and the worst thing you can do is fight against the fact that this is happening to you, and about accepting it. Also, get upset. I think that's really important. Like, get upset, scream, cry, like do what you need to do. And then, you know, think of ways that you can come back to yourself and move forward. My favorite quote is, you can let it ruin your lunch, but don't let it ruin your dinner. So like, get in a mood, get upset, feel it, but then move on. It's dinner time. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the main tips out of that are, don't label yourself, and also grieve it, and then just look forward at what you can do. Always look at what you can do, not what you can't.